Stepping up to the couch, it's Brian, who led the league last season in cracked screens. But with his new athletic case, it looks like that won't be the case. Touchdown, Brian!
Okay, this is the part of the video where normally I would justify my upcoming opinion by saying how much of a fan I am of Russell Westbrook and blah blah blah. I mean, it is true, Westbrook is one of the most exciting players in the league to watch, also one of the most frustrating players in the league to watch, as I've pointed out, but I digress. I could go on and on about why I like Russell Westbrook, and honestly I should, because it will help me get this video to 10 minutes. Trust me, I'm gonna get this bitch to 10 minutes, but I won't. Because I've learned from this video that no matter what I do, there's no way to fend off the Russ stans. So I'll just be blunt and say screw the pretense about me being a fan of Westbrook myself. Because Russell Westbrook did not deserve the 2017 NBA MVP award. Here's why. This all starts back in the 2016 offseason. Kevin Durant made the decision to leave the OKC Thunder to join the Golden State Warriors. Without a doubt, one of the biggest bitch moves of all time. After this, people had basically already decided that Westbrook would be the 2016-17 MVP. Well, actually, nah. Scratch that. This started before KD even left. Flashback to the 2014-15 season. After winning MVP in the 2013-14 season, giving his famous MVP speech,
"When you didn't eat, you made sure we ate. You went to sleep hungry. You sacrificed for us. You the real MVP."
Kevin Durant had a lot of nagging foot injuries. As a result, Durant only played 27 games that season. So naturally, the next superstar in line took the reins of the offense and Russ had to carry the load. While he certainly wasn't on his own with 26 games of Enes Kanter averaging 19 and 11, Serge Ibaka being a great role player and some great shooters and a good backup point guard behind him, Russ also wasn't in a great situation to win because he had to create 90% of the offense. Westbrook averaged 28.1 points, which was the highest in the league. He ended the season on an absolute tear, getting triple-double after triple-double. He did his best, but they missed the playoffs. Westbrook made it up to 4th in MVP voting. He didn't get any first place votes, but he still outranked Anthony Davis, who put up 24-10 and a league-high 3 blocks a game, shooting a career best from the field, who also made the playoffs, and Chris Paul, who put up 20 and 10, leading the Clippers to the 2nd seed. But that's fine. It was 100% going to be either Curry or Harden that year, so the voting doesn't really matter that much. So with that, the seed was planted. Not that Russ would win an MVP, but the fetishization of the triple-double. So fast forward back to 2016, KD leaves, and like I said, the narrative of Russ winning MVP started as soon as Durant started his next chapter. A simple revenge story spun by the media as well as the NBA's fan base, along with him putting up tons of triple-doubles in the 2014-15 season, and the idea that Russ would average a triple-double for the first time since Oscar Robertson was started. And well, the idea wasn't wrong. Westbrook was certainly capable of averaging a triple-double. In the 2016-17 season, Westbrook averaged 31.6 points, 10.7 rebounds, and 10.4 assists. His stats were ridiculous. Trust me, I wouldn't say anything less, but they require a little bit of context. While I feel the stat pattern narrative around him is a little overused, there is some validity to it. The 10.7 rebounds and 10.4 assists isn't as impressive to me as it was to most people. When your center is constantly boxing out for you to grab the rebound, when you're leaving your man wide open on the perimeter to position yourself for a rebound, it's not that impressive to me. Now I know the rebuttal to that is that the Thunder have Westbrook grab the rebound strategically to start the fast break, and that's fine, but if that's your argument, you are admitting that he's being handed free rebounds. If the team sets up Westbrook to get those rebounds, then they aren't really legitimate rebounds. They're being handed to him. So already that triple-double average looks very overrated. We will get more into the triple-double triple-double stuff in a second. And as for assists, if you average 10 assists but 5.4 turnovers, you're not that great of a passer. If you watch Westbrook play, he's no more than an average to slightly above average passer. He just gets those assist numbers because he has the ball so damn much. And to be honest, he has a tendency to force assists, passing them at bad times just for the sake of getting potential assists, which worked out often, but also led to 5.4 turnovers a game. I do believe Westbrook is a good rebounder and a solid passer, but he's more like a 6 to 7 rebound guy and a 5 to 6 assist guy. He just pads the extra assists and rebounds. The extra rebounds are just given to him and he forces a lot of passes. While there are other guys like Chris Paul, who more naturally are playmakers, they're not forcing it. I don't think Westbrook is naturally a 10 assist guy. And finally, for his efficiency, 42% from the field and actually a career best 34% from 3. Now when you average 31.6 points, I certainly let it slide a little bit, but the inefficiency does need to be taken into consideration for the point per game average. And in case you're going to bring up the triple-doubles lead to wins argument, while that is technically correct, the correlation isn't really legitimate. The Thunder also lost plenty of games where Westbrook contributed to his triple-double average, where he fell just short of a triple-double and the Thunder lost. These games were losses where 1 to 3 extra assists or rebounds wouldn't have made a difference in the win. The triple-double average came from many games where he didn't get a triple-double and the Thunder fell short. So if getting a triple-double wasn't synonymous with winning in those games, it wasn't synonymous with the games that they did win with him getting an actual triple-double. Winning with the triple-double was nothing more than a coincidence. So overall, I feel like Westbrook's stats were overrated, but even if they weren't, even if Russ could average a 30-point triple-double without going out of his way to get those averages, he still wouldn't have deserved MVP, because OKC was the 6th seed. They didn't even win 50 games, and that matters. Okay, so big shout out to B-Souls for the graphic. This is a list of all the players in NBA history to win MVP without getting a top 3 record in the league. So already the odds are completely against Westbrook. Technically, there have been only 2 6 seeds to win it outside of Westbrook. I say technically because one was given to Moses Malone on the 6-seeded Rockets, which was legit, but one was given to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who had the 4th best record in the West, but because of divisional stuff, which was an old rule, he was the 6th seed. So out of the 62 MVPs in NBA history, 6 didn't have a top 3 record in the NBA. One of those 6 being Russ. Only 5 out of 60 MVPs before Russ had less than a top 3 record. That's 91% of MVPs. Now, I already hear the excuses. Russ had a lesser supporting cast, so that makes up for him being a lower seed. They were also just 6 games behind a top 3 seed. Well, here's my answer to that. Westbrook's supporting cast wasn't bad at all. While Victor Oladipo sure as hell wasn't Pacers Oladipo, he was still good for about 16 points a game on decent efficiency. Enes Kanter was a good 6-man scorer off the bench. No good for the playoffs, but the MVP is a regular season award, so that doesn't matter. A great defensive pairing of Andre Roberson and Steven Adams, another great defender off of the bench in Jeremy Grant, Alex Abrines, who was a good shooter, plus 20 games of Doug McDermott and Taj Gibson. Was it a great supporting cast? No, but it was a legitimate supporting cast. Here's why you, the media, and everyone in between thought this was a bad supporting cast. Offensive bias. The Thunder were a top 10 defense. Oladipo, Roberson, and Adams were all great defensive players. Add in Taj Gibson for 20 games. The Thunder were a great defensive team with limited offensive options around Russell Westbrook. Very similar to Derrick Rose in 2011. You see a team where Westbrook is creating all of the shots and scoring 30 plus points a game, and you think that he's doing it all by himself, but he's really just doing it all by himself on offense. Now, I haven't mentioned who I think should have won MVP yet, though it is pretty obvious because, well, it was in between Russ and Harden all year. Since we're talking about offensive bias, it's time to bring up Harden into the conversation. Harden had a much better offensive supporting cast than Westbrook, I wouldn't deny that. They were one of the best offenses in the league, but a number 18 defense. While the Thunder were one of the best defenses, but 16th in offense. Harden had more help offensively. Guys like Eric Gordon, who was 6th man of the year, Clint Capella, who was a good pick and roll guy, Ryan Anderson, who spaced the floor, Trevor Ariza and Patrick Beverley as 3-and-D players, plus 20 games of another great 6th man in Lou Williams. Harden had great offensive help. Westbrook had great defensive help. Both had positives and negatives. Harden had spacing on the offensive end, but his team was, well, not that good at defense. The only real shooter in the starting lineup for the Thunder was Oladipo, and he wasn't even really that great of a shooter at the time. So Russ had to do pretty much everything on that side of the ball, but he also didn't have to worry about defense. Not that James Harden worried about it all that much. Since I've brought up Harden, let's look at his stats. 29.1 points, 11.2 assists, and 8.1 rebounds on 44% field goal percentage, 34.7% shooting from 3 on 9.3 attempts per game. He also averaged 5.7 turnovers, which is slightly more than Westbrook. So let's break this down. Russ averaged 2.5 more points per game. Harden averaged 0.8 more assists, 2.6 less rebounds than Westbrook, and he shoots slightly better from the field and from 3. As passers, they're essentially the same to me. While I feel Harden doesn't force passes at the rate that Westbrook does, I also don't think he's naturally an 11 assists per game guy. Just like Russ, more like a 5 to 7 assist guy, which is what Harden was putting up before being moved to point guard for this season. Harden's assist per game average was a little inflated, just like Westbrook's. What wasn't inflated was his rebounds per game. This was a career best for Harden, 8.1 boards a game. He didn't have his team strategically getting him free rebounds. He grabbed those rebounds legitimately, and as for the lesser point per game average, he was more efficient, so it kind of balances out. While the 1.5 field goal percentage difference and the 0.5 3-point percentage difference isn't all that much, where the big difference lies is in true shooting percentage, the best stat to determine shooting efficiency. Harden had a true shooting percentage of 61.3. Russ had a true shooting percentage of 55.4. This is due to Harden taking a lot more threes, taking less shots overall, and shooting much better from the free throw line. And before you get all uptight on free throw attempts, Harden averaged a whopping 0.5 more free throws per game than Westbrook. 0.5. Now, do I think Harden's stats are more impressive than Westbrook's? No. Does that mean I think Westbrook's were necessarily more impressive? No, not really. It all boils down to this. Harden won more games with an equal level of support. His supporting cast was just more offensively oriented than Westbrook's was. Their stats are pretty much equal in value to me, but Harden won more games. James Harden should have been a back-to-back MVP, with a serious chance of him three-peating now. Also, I don't really care that much for James Harden. I'm more of a fan of Westbrook than I am Harden, so if you want to claim bias here, you might just look kind of dumb. That's the